And if you did not join us on Facebook Live about an hour ago, we talked all about Dorian. Chief Meteorologist Derek Beasley really breaking it down. So, I mean, really, a lot of people's eyes are on this thing for the weekend, too.
And for good reason. But the thing is, there's still a lot of questions that have yet to be answered about the storm and its potential impacts on our area. But if we do see anything, it likely would be this weekend. So, again, something we're going to be watching very carefully here throughout the week. We have some storms that have been popping up. There are some showers here across parts of the area. Pardon me, we'll first go into portions of Glades County. Let's go into there quickly and show you what's going on. We do have some storms that have popped up in and around Palmdale, so you can see a little bit of rain going on there. Just to the north of Palmdale, hang up 27, and we're also looking at some other showers just offshore here. So Bonita Springs, you saw some storms here about an hour ago, and looks like some more just offshore. And last but not least, in the portions of DeSoto and Charlotte County, some showers either side of Highway 31 heading up towards Arcadia as well. Temperatures are in the 70s and 80s. The warm spots right now, 85 Marco Island, Golden Gate, Bonita Springs. Here in the Cape we're at 85 degrees, 86 in Naples. So it's another stuffy night here in Southwest Florida. And it looks like tomorrow morning we'll start off the morning into the upper 70s to around 80. Storms, though, beginning to fire up late morning near the interstate and then spreading inland as the afternoon goes on. We're in a westerly flow now, and that westerly flow off the Gulf is causing the showers to form a little earlier in the day and then pushing inland during the afternoon and evening hours. We'll see this tomorrow, and we'll also see it on Wednesday before the winds begin shifting back out of the east, and that's going to focus more of the storms here during the afternoon and evening here closer to the coast here to close out the work week. Now let's talk about Dorian. There it is right there. And you can see that in the last few frames it's tried to fire off some storms. The hurricane hunters have been out there throughout the evening and still measuring winds around 60 miles an hour. And that may be a bit on the generous side, but what I want to turn your attention to is how it looks on satellite. This is what we call lopsided or asymmetric convection, where it just doesn't look round like a typical system that is really getting organized. It's kind of lopsided. And that's because of all the dry air that it's sucking in. And there's a lot of dry air that it's being ingested in the system that's in the mid and upper parts of the atmosphere. And the environment that it has yet to move into is where you see these clouds ripping along here. That is upper level wind shear, which is also unfavorable. So a couple of things we're watching, and that in combination with land interaction, which is another very important thing. The official forecast track takes it in between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. This is the official Hurricane Center forecast track. That doesn't mean it's going to do that, but it kind of gives you an idea of the general movement and where we expect it to go. But notice the cone quite wide. It very easily could go over Hispaniola, which would tear the circulation up and potentially weaken it or prevent it from developing even further. Or if it stays out of water and avoids these very high mountains here across parts of Hispaniola, we could be looking at an intensifying system here as it makes its way into the southern Bahamas and then eventually perhaps moving into South Florida here by this weekend. But you see the computer model forecast tracks tightly clustered. They do spread out a little bit once they get to Florida, but you can see the general motion is towards the west-northwest, towards the state of Florida. But here really the bottom line is the future track is still uncertain. The eventual strength is uncertain because of the factors that I just mentioned. We want to see what it does going through those areas, the dry air, the shear, and the mountainous terrain. If it can avoid all that and happen to survive, we very well could see some potential impacts here during the weekend. It's still too early to say exactly what kind of impacts we'll see. We'll just have to continue to watch it here throughout the day, and we'll keep you updated. Here's a look at your 7-day forecast. Chances for storms again the next few days will be mainly during the morning and early afternoon, spreading inland, and then we'll get back to afternoon and evening storms later in the week, and we'll keep an eye on this weekend for the effects of Dorian, possibly.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Derek. Bracing for impact 2 years after Hurricane Maria, how people in Puerto Rico are doing with the storm on the way. And a university's band director attacked after the game. How he says it happened, that's still ahead. A band director for the University of Florida says a University of Miami fan roughed him up. He's not a typical Miami fan, just so you know. The band was heading back to the bus when police say the fan tried to pass through the band line, and that's when Jay Watkins Jr. put his arm out to stop them, and he says he was grabbed from behind and pushed to the ground. Gators fans say they're surprised something like that happened.
It's really upsetting to hear something like that.
They don't deserve to get attacked like that. The man's just trying to do his job.
Yeah, well, the director did have some cuts on his arms, a bump on his head. As of last night, police say they have not arrested anyone for the incident. Several people now arrested for the deaths of 12 people in a Florida nursing home after Hurricane Irma. Hear what their attorney had to say as they were being booked into jail. Legalizing recreational marijuana, the new push to make it happen here in Florida.
9 a.m. Live from the station that's in your corner. You're watching Fox 4 News at 10.
A push to legalize marijuana is growing. A group is hoping to get an amendment on 2020's ballot for voters to decide if you want to legalize marijuana. Fox 4's Anna Coles explains more about what they're doing.
So Make It Legal Florida is trying to do one thing, make the purchase and possession of recreational marijuana legal in the state. The Political Action Committee filed a petition with the state's Division of Elections to get an amendment on the 2020 ballot. According to the group, the amendment would allow anyone 21 years or older to possess and purchase marijuana and carry up to 2.5 ounces, which is a state felony. It also permits medical marijuana treatment centers to sell, distribute, or dispense marijuana if properly labeled.
Everyone's in favor of legalizing marijuana.
Anthony Thomas, a local activist, is trying to decriminalize marijuana in Fort Myers. He's already on a mission to help the group get some of the more than 760,000 signatures they need to get the amendment on the ballot.
And as we're collecting petitions for our March referendum to decriminalize it in the city of Fort Myers, we'll also be collecting signatures for them as well.
Fox 4 reached out to Make It Legal for an interview, and they said in an email, quote, Make It Legal Florida is proud to present a ballot initiative that will legalize the safe adult use of marijuana. Public opinion is on our side, and the time to act is now. Medical marijuana is legal in Florida, but Thomas says all marijuana needs to be legalized to improve our legal system.
I really believe it's a civil rights issue of our time. We have so many people entering into the criminal justice system because of a drug that really is not harmful to anyone.
The Lee County Republican Party said in a statement, quote, they will continue to advocate for the freedoms that every American enjoys under the Constitution while prioritizing the safety of our children. Anna Coles, Fox 4, in your corner.
Thank you, Anna. As Tropical Storm Dorian makes its way across the Atlantic, people in Puerto Rico are understandably nervous. It could threaten the island, which is still recovering from Hurricane Maria. A Florida restaurant owner says she's watching the storm closely since her sister and two nieces still live on the island. And her sister remembers vividly the devastation that last storm caused.
It was horrible. Trees falling down, everything flying around. And we were out here like months without water and light. It was terrible. It was horrible.
But with the island still recovering from the last hurricane, she says everyone is frantically preparing for whatever Dorian it may bring. All right, so here now, the Weather Center with Chief Meteorologist Derek Beasley, who's been tracking the tropics pretty actively for the past few days. And Dorian's really making quite a stink here now.
Well, yeah, you know, a lot of force, of course, understandably, folks in Puerto Rico really concerned about it. Right now, we're not looking at anything anywhere close to what Maria was with Dorian, but we're still watching it nonetheless. Wind's still at 60 miles an hour, but it's having an issue with dry air around it, and there's a lot of it in the Caribbean now, and that is unfavorable for strengthening. So as long as that remains the case, it's going to have issues here getting a little bit stronger than what we're seeing right now, but it's trying. Here's the latest advisory. Now, we're going to get the new one here in less than a half hour, but you can see the latest forecast track, cone of uncertainty now moving into parts of South Florida here by later in the weekend. So we could be seeing some impacts here depending on how the storm handles the adverse conditions it's about to deal with. Also, the land interaction that may potentially face if it happens to move over the Dominican Republic. Some of those mountain peaks are over 10,000 feet, and that will certainly disrupt the circulation. But you can see the computer model forecast tracks take it west-northwest, potentially moving through the Bahamas, then possibly moving into parts of Florida here by later this weekend. And while you were sleeping, we do have a new tropical depression. That's Tropical Depression 6 off the Atlantic coast. Will not be a threat to land, perhaps the Canadian Maritimes here by later in the week, but other than that, should stay away from the U.S. We'll have a complete look at your forecast coming up.
All right, sounds good, Derek. Remember, For Your Corner is your source for complete weather coverage. Just download our free Storm Shield 4 mobile app for push alerts and up-to-date information about weather conditions in your area. The families of those firefighters lost at sea are thanking the agencies who spent hours searching for their loved ones. Tonight, still no sign of Brian McClooney and Justin Walker. 10 days ago, they left Cape Canaveral for a fishing trip and never made it back. Last week, the Coast Guard called off the search. McClooney's wife let first responders know they did everything they could have to save these men.
I know firefighters love to fix things and make things right. They did. You did everything that you needed to do.
McClooney's wife says they're they hope the firefighters would be found alive. Well, some volunteers aren't ready to give up, still searching for the pair on their own time. The man convicted of throwing his daughter off a bridge and killing her is hoping to get a new trial. John Johnchuk was sentenced to life in prison for his daughter's death this year. His attorneys claim he didn't get a fair trial. They made their points to a judge today. The judge will give a written order on whether Johnchuk will have a new trial. Florida investigators are working to find out who's in charge of a statewide puppy theft ring. It all started almost a year ago, back in November. A Florida woman was arrested after she bought a French bulldog puppy with a stolen credit card. But now investigators say this was just one of many. New documents show a crime ring is behind similar thefts all over the state.
It started out as what looked like a basic theft and just kind of snowballed from there and got really big, really out of control really fast.
So the ring works like this. People work together to commit credit card fraud by buying numbers off the dark web. And then they buy big ticket items like expensive dogs and lawn equipment to sell later. A federal appeals court has sided with a controversial former Broward County election supervisor in a legal battle about whether she took proper steps to remove ineligible voters from election rolls. The 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a lower court decision that said Brenda Snipes had adequately complied with requirements in federal elections laws. The panel ruled against a group that filed the lawsuit in 2016 and contended that Snipes had not properly made efforts to remove ineligible voters. The mayor of a Florida county where federal officials are considering opening a child detention shelter says the proposal would require the approval of local officials. Orange County Mayor Jerry Deming says the space under consideration isn't zoned for a residential care facility and would require a special use permit. That involves a public hearing before a zoning board and approval from county commissioners. The proposed facility would house 500 children. Several state officials have been vocal in their opposition to a shelter in Central Florida. And 19 states are suing the Trump administration for the push to end limits on how long migrant children are detained. The states are looking to stop the president's attempt to attend the Flores Agreement. That agreement took effect in 1997. It requires children be released from detention centers after 20 days. However, the administration wants to hold them until their asylum cases are decided, which could take months for some. A judge still has to approve the president's request to end the agreement. Police in Florida are arresting several former nursing home employees, including the administrator of the Hollywood Rehabilitation Center, after 12 people died during a hurricane. That was Hurricane Irma 2 years ago. The charges are set to be announced tomorrow. However, manslaughter is expected to be among them. Brandon Beyer has the latest from Hollywood.
2 years after 12 people died at a Hollywood nursing home, the former administrator of the facility is under arrest. Jorge Carvalho was in charge of the rehabilitation center at Hollywood Hills when Hurricane Irma hit back in 2017. Several days after losing power and air conditioning, 8 residents would die. The death toll would eventually climb to 12. Now Carballo and several others are facing charges. Their attorney with them as they surrendered at the Broward County Jail Monday.
And you got to remember, these are extremely elderly people. Most of them were in hospice and were expected to die.
But not like this, according to their families, many of whom have filed lawsuits. Among those killed, Miguel and Celia Franco, who were married for more than 60 years.
How do you explain or help yourself know that they're gone?
And 78-year-old Carolyn Etherly, survived by her best friend.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine what she must have gone through. It hurts me.
Now 2 years later, charges being handed out.
In the days following the deaths, former Governor Rick Scott set new emergency requirements for nursing homes and assisted living facilities. It mandates such facilities have supplies, power, and resources, including a generator and adequate fuel to operate for at least 96 hours after a power outage. Palm Beach County could soon clamp down on vaping near playgrounds. The County Commission announced they'll take the measure up in October. The county's Parks and Rec Department says they want to ban vaping so kids don't see it and possibly want to try it. If passed, the new ordinance would fine people $300 or more for vaping near parks. Women's rights activists are pushing the governor to support the Equal Rights Amendment.
What do we want? ERA! When do we want it? Now!
The amendment is meant to end legal distinctions between men and women for employment, divorce, property, and others. Congress approved it and sent it to the states for ratification. So far, 37 of them have supported it, and now this group hopes Florida will be the 38th to do so.
We want true equality guaranteed in the United States.